Well, good evening. Our panelists are going to be joining us here in a second. Hey, Catherine.
There.
Hey, Laura. Alex, great
Hey.
to have you all on here. I want to welcome you three. As I mentioned before, the three of us are going to pretend, the four of us, we're going to pretend like we're having a conversation in my living room, though it's not quite like that. For all of you who are joining us as attendees, I just want to say welcome. So glad you're here. One of the things I want to just invite you to do kind of off the bat here is to go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen and to look at the thing that says Q&A. And one of the things that we're going to be doing is we want to ask and seize the times today to just be able to focus on some of the questions you have that are particular to maybe your environment or to this area. Obviously, we're going to be focusing on kind of the North Atlanta dynamic because these are three nurses that are engaged in three hospitals in the North Atlanta area, but nonetheless, or in Atlanta. But one of the things we want to do is be able to answer specifically some of the questions you have. So right away, as we're starting to talk here, if you have particular questions, go ahead and drop them in that Q&A. And I'll be bringing these up then to our panelists throughout the time. So make sure you start populating that with any initial thoughts. They can be small questions, big questions. We've already agreed in our pre-conversation that if they don't have an answer for you, they won't give you the answer. So it'll be great. So other than the questions to be asked, one of the things I just want to say is some of you are from out of town. I'm looking through some of the attendees here. And also one of the things that some folks may be joining that aren't part of Roswell Community Church or our friends or family or connections. We're just really glad that you're choosing to tune in, whether on live moment now or on the replay, because we think that there's a really unique opportunity right now, not just to have specific questions answered, but to have some of the tangible distance we have from some of the things that we're holding in hospitals, in the medical community, to be brought a lot closer home. So that's some of what we're hoping to do tonight, on top of being able to answer your specific questions. So hopefully some practical help for y'all, so for those of you who have questions, as well as some real hope for the situation that we're finding ourselves in. So again, welcome to all of you attendees. I'm not going to focus back on the panelists. Ladies, I'm really, really glad we get to do this. We had such a great time kind of prepping for this. And so what I want to do is invite each of you to kind of give us just a little snapshot. Who are you, kind of family, season of life, where are you at? And then we'll kind of start jumping into some particular questions. So Alex, I'm gonna go ahead and kick off with you.
All right, so for those of you that don't know me, I'm Alex Flo. I have been a pediatric nurse for about 10 years now. Laura and I actually went to nursing school together, which is crazy. So it's been about that long since we've gotten to hang out. So I'm so excited to get to talk to her and hear about what she's going through.
The virus to bring you guys back together.
It's so sad.
I know, right?
Oh my gosh. I've got a 1.5-year-old and a 5-year-old girl that I'm chasing around these days. And in terms of nursing, the majority of what I've done is just in cardiac intensive care, but in the past couple of years, I've switched over to recovery room, which is kind of post-surgical, waking up and getting back to their family, kiddos, waking up from surgery and going back to their families. So that has been where I've been at. That's
awesome. So pediatric opportunity, questions related to the kid front. Alex will be a particular source for some of those things, but of course, all of you can weigh in on those elements. So awesome. Alex, so glad to have you with us. Catherine, tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. I'm Catherine Street. I'm Jan Norma's youngest child. I've been in nursing for 5 years. All of that has been adult ICU. Super fun environment, never a boring day. I'm single. I do have a roommate who's graduating medical school in just a couple of months. So it's been interesting going through this journey with her. And then that's me. Just a lot of work.
Okay, so you're on the ICU front. That's awesome. Laura, got to meet you just a little bit ago, and you are delightful. So tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me to all this, you guys. I really appreciate it. My name's Lourdes Jones. I am currently an adult ER nurse, so kind of on the front lines of all this that's going on. My personal life, I am married. We've been married for 33 years. We have, believe it or not, 8 children. 6 are grown and adults and have children of their own and kind of launched and doing their own thing. And then we adopted 2 little boys. So we currently have an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old that we're raising. So life has not been boring at all.
I would say so. Now, Laura, you have a kind of a unique situation. You're not coming to us. First of all, you just got off your shift, which I just want to say thanks so much. You just got off your
Thank you.
shift at 7 p.m. to make this happen. So thank you in advance. But you're actually not coming to us from your house. Tell us a little bit about like the reality of where your living quarters are currently.
So the reality of my life right now, the the virus has become prominent enough in our community that I'm exposed to it. I'm exposed to it on a daily basis at work. We do not have the proper PPE that we need to face the challenges that we're, confronted with on a daily basis. So my husband and I made an executive decision last week and decided to purchase a camper. So I am currently quarantining myself in a camper in my backyard, away from my family. So it's been, to say unique is probably an understatement. It's been hard. It's been really hard. I miss my children. I miss them terribly. I can see them from a distance. And we have walkie-talkies. So for the kids, we're trying to make this an adventure. Like, hey, mom's out in the backyard. Let's walkie-talkie. And, so we're making an adventure for them. But this mama's heart is broken, just being away from them.
Well, I just want to say, in light of that, the different waves of impact on different folks, I just wanted to say thanks for being with us tonight and being able to give us perspective. You have the ER side, so you're getting to see a different angle. So hopefully between these 3 perspectives, we can have some good questions answered. But so thanks. Just want to say again, thanks for making the time tonight. One of the, just kind of to kick off, the questions that we want to ask is what's it like right now from a doctor nurse perspective, life in the hospital at this point? What are things that realistically we may not realize that it's like for y'all? So I'm gonna go back, reverse order. We'll go ER to ICU, and then we'll come to you, Alex. So why don't you start with soft, Laura? What's the reality like? You just came off. What's life like at the hospital at this point?
The reality in the ER right now is it's very different. It's a very different climate right now. ER nurses as a whole tend to be very brave. We tend to be, we're not scared of much. We're really not. There's not much we're afraid of as nurses, because when people come into us as an ER, we don't know what they have. There is no diagnosis. They're coming into us with XYZ complaint, and we don't know what the end result of that will be until probably later when they're admitted. We won't have the end results of a lot of the testing that we've done. So it's difficult from that perspective. It's very intense right now, because we're having to be hyper aware of what we touch, of how we're prepared for the patients that are coming in, the PPE, which is personal protective equipment that we have on to protect ourselves from whatever may come in, be it coronavirus, be it the flu. All of those things are still very much on the forefront, so we're having to take all of that into consideration and be able to prepare ourselves for what's coming in. The reality that I can tell you from the patient's perspective is a lot harder than what the normal is. So we've had patients coming in, I can't give you exacts, but for instance, we have a married couple that comes in. She is coming in for abdominal pain, and she is literally wailing in pain. Just an excruciating pain. Well, hospital policies pretty much nationwide right now are that there are no visitors allowed in the hospital at all. No exceptions. Very, very few exceptions are allowed. And so we're having to separate these family members, so this husband and wife that have been married for 60 years, suddenly they're coming into the hospital. She's wailing in pain. We take her through those double doors in the ER to treat her, and the spouse is left out in the waiting room, or even better, out in his car, and won't know anything that's going on until we can update him. And so it's a very different climate right now that we're experiencing than ever before in my history, of being a nurse.
Wow. Wow. Well, Catherine, what about you? What's it like kind of behind the scenes there? People come from the ER and end up in ICU, and what's that looking like for you?
Yeah, so a typical day for me is these days much longer. Waking up around 4:30, getting to the hospital around 6 to change into hospital scrubs, so that as I'm interacting with these cases, I'm not bringing that home with me, or mitigating that to the most we can. And then in the ICU, we are wearing the N95 masks for 12, 13, 14, 15 hours straight.
These are hot.
Very, very
Yeah.
hot. Lots of steam facials. It's great for the pores. But it's a pretty sad reality. ICU, we have the benefit that the ER has run the tests, they've run the labs, and when they get up to us, we know what we're facing to a certain degree. So we've got the label of COVID rule-out patient coming into us. For the past month, I have only taken care of COVID rule-out patients. So I am interacting with this every single shift. And it's very sad because in the ICU, these patients are extremely critical. Often they're intubated and put on life support, put on a ventilator, breathing for them. And they are not allowed to have any visitors during that time. So they're having to go under intubation, which is putting in that breathing tube without any family members there. For those patients who are in the ICU who are not intubated, we recommend FaceTime. So they're FaceTiming their families, and that's giving them some connection, but it's a lot of isolation, and it's pretty scary for them.
Well, and how, as a recent visitor to the ICU myself, that like the nurses were amazing. Like they were so connected, so caring, so engaged. Like how is the corona effect on how you guys are able to care, just actually like for the people, like kind of some of the not just the medical side, right, but also the people side. Like, how's that affecting you guys?
Yeah, definitely feel like a hazmat bunny going in to take care of my patients, because they can't see my face other than like my eyes behind a mask, behind a shield. But I try to tell them, I know this feels isolating. I know this is scary, being treated like you're hazardous material, but we are here for you. We are fighting so hard for you, and we're giving you all the TLC we can for you to kick this thing. And trying to maintain that intentional person-to-person connection, I think, is critical. For these families as well. We can only update them, typically because of time, we can only update them maybe once a shift. So we'll do a phone call to the family and say, we are doing everything we possibly can. We're in this together as a community. Keep holding down the home front while we hold down the hospital front, because it's going to take all of us together to kick this thing as a community.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite the insight. All right, Alex, you come from a different perspective. You're on the peds front, so tell us a little bit about what you're experiencing at this point. What's the hospital life like for you?
So it is a lot different than what you guys are going through. As we all know, kids are not being affected as much by this, thank God. As devastating as it is right now, like if you can imagine that children were being affected in the same way as adults, it would be absolutely horrible. So for us, we have a lot of, the symptoms are fever and cough. That's like the life of most children, of having a fever and cough. So I would say for us, it is strange because I do work post-surgical. So all elective surgeries are canceled right now. So we're only doing emergent cases. And we all know kids are just little carriers right now. You don't know what they have. And they don't know what they have. And most kids that wake up from surgery, mainly everybody that wakes up from surgery coughs, all the time. So you're like, do I wear this mask? Do I wear that mask? Do they have a fever? Do they have a cough? Do they not? What do they have done? So for us, like, hats off to you guys 100%, because you're just you're right in the middle of it. And I have so much respect for you. And I know you guys are doing a great job. For us, it's more of like an uneasiness because a lot of kids probably have it but don't know it. And so it's typically at the hospital, it's very straightforward. Like, this is what we do. This is what we do. Everything's done. But I'm sure in the same way, like, it changes every day for you guys. Like, today we're wearing this. Today we're wearing this. If it's this kind of case, you're wearing this now. And you haven't been wearing that for the past 3 weeks. So, like,
what does that mean?
yeah. So, like, what have I been doing the past 3 weeks?
Right.
What have I been exposed to, you know? So yeah, it's just kind of like this overall uneasiness, I would say, for us. Because we do have a lot of rule out COVIDs, but we don't have a lot of confirms because the symptoms aren't like meeting criteria for testing. So it's just kind of a weird place right now.
Yeah. Wow. It's helpful, Alex, when you were sharing with me earlier just about the fact that, like, not all departments, not all units are affected in the same ways by this. And so it's this kind of unique piece where throwing all medical personnel in one basket is not actually accurate, but at the same time, the potential is still out there for all folks. And those of you who probably
Right.
primary care physician, you probably experienced that. But one of the questions that emerged, one of the first questions here is just, how are you guys get nervous about getting sick? Like, how does it play? You mentioned that pretty much all your patients, Catherine, are COVID patients at this point, but like, what's this like for you guys, and then for kind of your teammates, the other nurses, like, what's the other doctors, what's the sense of, am I sick? Am I not sick? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that play tricks on your mind? You're around it all the time, or the potential of it all the time, in ways that you're not at the grocery store, or even, when you're having to go out when you're at home. So, like, tell me about what that's like. Tell us what that's like. Are you nervous, and does it play tricks on your mind as a team?
Yeah, especially with allergy season, I've definitely gotten way better at taking my Allegra every day. Because, the second you have that tickle in your throat, you're like, all right, what's going on? But yeah, I've, with all of these cases that are coming through, we have had confirmed cases, unfortunately, among staff.
Right.
So it is a very real risk, and we are taking very sober precautions as much as we possibly can to mitigate spreading this in our community, because we're probably like some of the highest likelihood vectors for this thing as healthcare workers.
Right.
And feel a great sense of responsibility not interacting with the community, so that way we don't share it to other people if we do have it. But yeah, it is real.
And what about you guys, Alex and Laura? What about you?
Yeah, I agree. There's a huge sense of social responsibility right now. Like I said, I've quarantined myself away from my family. It's a very different atmosphere right now. And to Alex's point, of not knowing whether we're dealing with patients that have it or not, when you come into the ER, I can tell you right now, the majority, and I mean the majority of people are not being tested because, number one, we don't have the test available. Number two, the labs that process the test for us are overwhelmed.
Right.
They didn't see this coming. They had no way to prepare for the amount of people and the amount of tests that would be coming in. So if you come into the ER, generally we're not testing. We're not testing you at all. So the numbers that we're seeing on the news or on Fox News or CNN, they're highly inaccurate as far as positives, because we're not testing the majority of people that come in. The reality of it is if you come in and you're symptomatic for it, you're not severe,
right,
but you're symptomatic for it. You have a headache. You have a fever, your lungs hurt, that type of thing. Basically, we're discharging you and saying, go home and quarantine. Put yourself in isolation, isolate from your family. Like I know, the 3 or 4 people that I had today, I was like, go home, isolate yourself, put yourself in a bedroom, have your own bathroom, just do the best you can to isolate yourself from your own family, which, is a stark reality for a lot of people. So it's hard. It's hard on a lot of people right now.
Yeah, and now, Catherine, you mentioned folks, some of your teammates, et cetera, some of them getting sick. Is that like? I mean, I think I've heard that question from a variety of folks. Is there a sense of, are a lot of doctors and nurses getting sick? Like, or is it actually pretty low percentage? I mean, I know you guys are putting on PPE right and left, so that you're living that. But what I mean, is it kind of like every day there's a new coworker, or is it? I mean, what's the feel in the air? Is it like, oh, another one bit the dust kind of thing, or what's the air? Really?
I know in the ICU, at least, we're luckily not at that point yet. Thank God. But I know other locations like New York has been hit particularly hard. They're probably ahead of us in terms of chronology right now. But it's not every day another one's going down, luckily. We are just very aware that there are real cases among our team. So.
All right, so let me just ask one of the questions that emerged was people are going to the ER. You mentioned when they shouldn't. Like, when should someone go to the ER? I'm just gonna ask a very simple, straight question that I think eludes so many people. Whether it's your kid, your husband, your friend, like, when should you go to the ER? Can you put on that, Laura?
Yes, I really can. And that's a great question, and it's posed by hundreds and hundreds of people right now, because it is very elusive right now as to when you should come into the ER. So clearly the things that are still happening, heart attacks, strokes, those type of things, you're going to come to the ER. Like, if you're having chest pain, don't hesitate. You're still going to come to the ER, and we're still going to treat you.
What you're saying?
I'm sorry?
You can't quarantine yourself from a heart attack, is what you're saying.
Right. Exactly. I mean, we're in ER. We're still having medical emergencies, even within this, this pandemic. There's still medical emergencies going on. Those haven't still the same. And so, if you're having the symptoms, please come in and see us. Please dial 911 if those symptoms are severe enough. However, so now let's focus on coronavirus, and you're feeling symptomatic for those. Okay, so let's start out with the patients that I've had. They've been exposed. They know their mother-in-law was diagnosed with coronavirus 2 days ago. So they want to come in and get tested. The reality of that situation is you will not be tested. We cannot administer those tests anymore because we don't have them available to test you with. The labs are overwhelmed. So if you're asymptomatic, please don't come to the ER, please, because number one, you're going to expose yourself to even more than you would have before. So just self-quarantine. If you know you have been exposed to it, self-quarantine for 14 days and do what you can to just isolate yourself from exposing it to anybody else. Yeah. The second group of people is they're symptomatic. They have a dry cough. They have a little bit of a fever. They've got body aches. They're not feeling well, but generally they're okay. They just don't feel good. Again, this is not something that we're testing for in the ER in general.
I'm assuming that you're getting a decent amount of folks that are coming, like they have a sense of the flu. They're not feeling, they're just coming to the ER.
Correct. They're just coming in because, and trust me, I understand people are scared. They're having symptoms of it, and oh my gosh, what do I do now? But if your symptoms are fairly mild, and by mild I mean fever, cough, body aches, headache, the symptoms I hear the worst is the headache. If you're having those symptoms, you're okay. So stay at home, because what we're going to do is you're going to come in, we're going to discharge you back home to quarantine and say, please self-quarantine for 14 days. that's all we can do. We don't have a treatment for this that's available yet. Tylenol every 4 hours, just treat the symptoms with over-the-counter medications as you can. The time to come to the ER.
When do you come? Like, hey, get in here. What would you say?
Right. So the time to come to the ER, you're short of breath. You go to walk from your bed to the bathroom and you cannot catch your breath. That is the time I want you to come see me.
Gotcha.
Please come see me at that point. If your symptoms are not manageable at home, please come see me. That is the time to come see me. If your symptoms are mild, please just self-quarantine, because there's nothing at this point in this pandemic that we have available to us to be able to treat you with. So treat yourself with Tylenol. But really, if you're short of breath, you just feel like you're drowning, basically, that's the time to come see us.
That's really helpful. I mean, it's really a clarifying piece. I think you hit the on the head, the fear. It's like, well, surely the ER is going to help me, because the ER is always available to help me, right?
Right.
It's not
right. And the problem is that people are coming into us with these symptoms, and they're relatively mild. And I realize when you're experiencing those symptoms, they're not mild to you. I really do understand that. But if you've got a fever, you've got a little bit of a cough and stuff, you're only exposing yourself to more if you come into the ER, So try it. If it's avoidable, try to avoid it.
Awesome.
And along with that, I would say, like, one of the big things is we really want you to reach out to your doctor first. Like, if you have a fever, please just call your doctor and run over your symptoms with them. There's no point in rushing to the ER with the fever, because, like she said, like, you're either going to get something else or you're going to give something to someone else. So,
Right.
Laura, what would you recommend for people if they are coming in symptomatic to the ER? Should they wear a bandana over their mouth just to prevent spreading it to other people in your waiting room? What are you recommending from that front?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you have a mask available, if you have a scarf available, I mean, I realize we're at this point in this pandemic, it's whatever you can use. So let me, a tiny bit of education here. If you wear your mask here over your mouth, it is not helping you. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm really, really not. This is not helping you at all.
Yeah,
you have to cover your nose and you have to cover your mouth. Let me make a bigger point. Do not touch your face, because it goes in through your points of entry are eyes, nose, and mouth. So you can cover your nose, you can cover your mouth with these masks. If you've got glasses, please wear them. It will protect you. But on top of that, just don't touch your face, because that is how it's getting in, and that's how, the viral replication happens, so just
that's really
try to protect yourself as much as you can.
We've had a couple questions come in about respirators, ventilators on the ICU front. You want to just talk a little bit about that? I mean, that's obviously in the news a ton. So what's that looking like locally from your perspective, at least Catherine, maybe for you guys, you hear from your other units, the ventilator crisis, are there enough, just all that stuff and what that means. And honestly, what does it mean to be on a ventilator? Because I think that doesn't necessarily, people like to know what that means. So
I'll start with what a ventilator is, and then I'll go into the numbers that we have. To be on a ventilator, a physician puts a tube, they give you sleeping medicine, and then the physician puts a tube into your trachea, down to your lungs, and the machine will push and pull air in and out of your lungs for you, to breathe for you. While you're on the ventilator, it's called being intubated. That's another word you might hear. While you're on the ventilator, you're going to be on continuous infusions of sleeping medication and pain medication to make sure that you're comfortable and calm. And you might be in kind of a twilight sleep where you can wake up a little bit, but not a whole lot. As your lungs get healthier and as you improve, they'll start waking you up a little bit more and talking you through what you can do to get extubated, which is where that tube comes out. But we try to make sure that it's extremely comfortable and that you're on enough happy juice to make sure you're not freaking out. In terms of how many ventilators we have, I can speak to my ICU and a little bit to local ICUs in Atlanta. I have not heard at this point that we've run out of ventilators. Thank God. I know New York is facing a different reality, but as far as our local ICUs right now, from what I've heard through my friends, we're in an okay position. Social distancing has helped a whole lot. I know it's boring, but keep it up because we appreciate it on the ICU front. I don't want to see you.
Yes.
Not in my unit.
What was that, Laura?
I said yes. Completely agree. It is making a difference, and I know that people at home don't see the reality of what's going on, but you just have to trust us on this. You do not want to expose yourself to this stuff. Yeah. So please, the key to all of this is staying home. Just do whatever it takes for you to be able to stay at home.
As far as from y'all's, your hospitals, the ventilator thing, again, it's just kind of a question. Has that been a thing from what you hear from your kind of ICU context? Laura or Alex?
Oh, you're talking about me?
Yeah.
So as far as we're concerned, we are hitting pretty high capacities in our ICUs and our med-surg units. We're hitting pretty high levels as far as that goes. We're doing okay. Otherwise, it's just not a position you want to be in. So ventilators are not scarce yet for the patients that need them. It's getting to that point. What is really scarce right now is PPE, for the medical staff as well as patients. So we're being very, hospital actually just offers for us to be able to work on a back.
You're breaking up just a little bit on us, Laura, so you might have to switch to,
Let's see.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Okay.
Well, actually, back to on the PPE front, I had a question. There's a question here that's just asking, a lot of people are making masks for places that need them right now. Like, what type of materials are they used for that? Is that a real thing for medical professionals yourselves? What does that look like? I mean, I know there's people making masks for themselves in a way now that that's become a thing, but what does that mean or look like for y'all?
I would say initially when we weren't recommending the public to wear masks, that it was like, let's make them for healthcare providers. But in terms of the specifics of the mask and what you're making, it's very difficult to kind of replicate what we have at the hospital. So kind of what I've heard is, cotton is great because you can breathe through it, but then that also means germs are flying through it. Right. So in terms of going to the grocery store, that's fine. And like, we want the public to be wearing that. So, but for us as nurses, at least for me, and what I've heard is that's the ones that people are making us are more like covers for our actual that we're getting from the hospital.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it looks like based on the research that I'm following right now, it will pay off for the public to wear homemade masks if they're not in the community doing grocery shopping or going to the drugstore, largely because you're preventing, if you're asymptomatic, you're preventing spreading your own germs to others. So they're not necessarily quite as effective from preventing you from getting germs from other people, but they are helping if you are asymptomatic from spreading your germs to others. I know I'm not a seamstress. I don't sew. So we've had a couple of patients' families bring us homemade masks, and I take it home, I wash it, I dry it, and then I use it when I'm out at the grocery store because I can't sew. So on that front, I appreciate that for the people that are donating masks, because some of us
very much.
That's not one of them.
And I will say on my end, so I think you were talking about how like the personal dynamic of being in all this garb with your patients. So that's like a huge thing with kids, because can you imagine? I'm like coming in with this like shield and mask and gown. I'm like, I promise I'm safe, So
Alex, maybe you shouldn't open with maybe,
Yeah. Like, yeah.
maybe work on some of that. I don't know.
Yeah. That way. But I will say, like, the homemade mask, like the one that I currently have, is a Minnie Mouse one that goes on top, which I feel like that really helps, because then at least kids are seeing something that's different than just
That's cool.
like,
That
here's
helps.
a lot of scary stuff.
Right.
Realistically, there's not a mask that could be made by the public that you're going to wear that's actually going to provide you the kind of support you need from a PPE standpoint.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
So,
But like, to be able to cover the mask we do have so that we can re-wear the mask that we do have is great. So then we can bring it home and wash it.
okay.
And to your point, Alex, so in the ER, exactly what you were saying, our PPE is so low that we are wearing our N95s for approximately 3 shifts in a row, which is unheard of, as you know. Going to school, we're drilled with proper PPE and how to not contaminate ourselves, so that we can avoid getting sick with what everybody's coming in with. And we feel very safe in that because we've been educated on it, and that's all changed. It's all changed dramatically. It really changes 2 or 3 times a shift for us as to what we're to wear, what's going to keep us safe. So the homemade masks are actually making a difference, because the N95s that normally we would only wear for 1 patient, and then they would be thrown away, are now being worn for 13 hours. And so we're wearing the homemade mask over the top of the N95s to protect our N95s. Then we bring the homemade mask home, we wash them, So yeah, the PPE has become a major thing for us.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So some of the questions, I'm getting some questions about, and by the way, if you're on as an attendee and you haven't been able to post a question, just go to the bottom of your screen. This is Q&A. Just type in your question. I can see them right here, and love to be able to ask the pertinent questions. But one of the questions is just a trending. What's, we see curves on TV, right? Like, here's the trend. What's it looking like in the Atlanta kind of environment? Are you seeing like double from last week? What are you hearing from your, kind of the leaders in those contexts about, this is what we're expecting, get ready, we've been hearing about a wave coming, that this is the critical week, things like that. What are you guys actually experiencing on the ground from a kind of week to week? If you look back, maybe if you look at the last 3 weeks, what are you seeing, experiencing?
I can actually address that question. So from the ER perspective, the last couple of weeks, our census has actually been really low. We've been really low census due to the fact that people were not coming in for, the generalized things that they come in with. However, in the past 7 days, our census has increased dramatically, and the people that are coming in are extremely ill. The majority of them are COVID rule outs, so we're testing them for the virus because they're sick enough to be tested. And it's just, I would say we're on an increase as far as the hospital that I work for.
Yeah, I would second that. I know in the ICU, the difficulty we have is the turnaround time on the ventilators. So typically you can get a patient intubated right on the ventilator for a couple of days, get them extubated and get them out of the ICU. This thing takes a while to kick. So the patients, once they're intubated, have to stay on the ventilator for quite a lot longer, with a lot more supportive care before we can hopefully get them extubated and out of the ICU. So we are
2 days. What are you looking at right now? Is it what's more normative at this point?
Weeks is not unusual.
Right.
Is it a week or weeks?
Week or weeks is not unusual, depending on the case.
Okay.
It does affect more than just the lungs. So we are having to do other therapies in order to support the rest of the body, which takes more one-on-one nursing care to run the machines, which means we're more strapped for nurses, which means longer days, more stressful days. But it's pretty serious, and we're operating at capacity in terms of bed space and nurses to take care of these patients.
Someone just asked about, they're like, hey, so what hospitals do y'all work at? We've just from a perspective of, proprietary information, et cetera. They didn't want to represent their hospitals directly. No one's going to be talking about which hospital they work for, but they work at great hospitals and they're very proud of their hospital. So they're not going to be answering that, but we're super grateful for them and the hospitals they work in. So, so what, let me just switch this a little bit to, what are some of the bright spots? What are some of the like beautiful things, the cool stories, the things that have been meaningful to you guys individually or as your teams, your staffs? Like, what are some of this has been really beautiful, really cool, something really meaningful, kind, just acts of generosity, faithfulness, kindness. What's that look like? Anything in particular?
Oh goodness. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I would say, for us, definitely in the healthcare world, it's been really cool to see the camaraderie, and the teamwork that is before, like, you're doing your job and it's your normal day, but recently it's like, no, this actually, it kind of gives you that reminder that it counts, and you could be in a room and you're all in that, like, in the mask and the shield and everything, and that everybody in that room, you trust them and you trust what they're doing to take care of you, and we're trying to minimize spread to other people. And so I think honestly, like, being in this season with people that it's like just this kind of bonding moment that you'll like have forever.
Yeah, like you're in the trenches. There's the camaraderie of the trenches. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In the ICU, we never wear scrub caps because it's just not part of our job. Scrub caps are the colorful fabric hats that you'll see them wear on like Grey's Anatomy and that type of thing. And when we first started, highly medically accurate.
Yeah. Just follow Grey's Anatomy for all your updates.
Yeah. Like this one.
No.
And so when we were first getting all the cases hitting us in ICU, we ran out of the disposable caps that we do have in the ICU. And one of our operating room nurses found out about it, and she got the word out to the OR team, and they all donated to the ICU their fabric scrub caps for us to take home, launder, and then wear. So we're all wearing borrowed scrub caps from our team members in other units that haven't been affected quite as significantly. And when she came up to us in the ICU and handed them all out, there were tears in all of our eyes. Wow. Because it made a huge difference for us.
Yeah, man, that's really beautiful. That's awesome.
I completely agree. We have seen so many outstanding
Hey, Laura, you're breaking up on us one more time. You might want to try to go without for a second.
Hang on. Let me turn the video off. Okay, can you hear me?
You're clear.
Does that work better? Okay. So many businesses have reached out to us. They've offered lunches for the nurses. Several church organizations have actually donated hand-sewn masks. So I know one of our nurses actually is a member of a home group, and each member of the home group actually went out, got the materials, sewed the homemade mask for us, and just blessed us with, it was hundreds of them, hundreds of masks, that we've been able to wear. That has been amazing. But honestly, if I was to tell you the thing that has touched me the most through all of this, being in what I feel like is a war. Like, I feel like I'm at war right now. The thing that has touched me the most is the churches that have come together and gone into the hospital parking lots and had a praise and worship. And they've just sang or prayed or whatever. It's going to make me cry. That alone has meant more to us, Christian or not, has meant more to us that are on the front lines and are in the trenches of this, trying our best to survive, trying our best to do what's best for the community, what's best for our patients, what's best for our families. It's intense. And that moment where we see them pull up into the parking lot and they're singing and like just thanking us.
Wow.
Just the acknowledgement of the devastation that we're feeling as human beings, not only as healthcare workers, but as human beings, to see our fellow humanity suffering like they are. It's meant more than I can even tell you.
Yeah. Wow.
Mhm.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I think one of the things I was curious about. I know that there's definitely some parents on the attendees with some younger kids and stuff like that. But Alex, one of the things, just to kind of get a sense of what is the kid front look like when it comes to, like, if someone comes to y'all and their kid is maybe showing some symptoms or not showing some symptoms, what is that going to look like from a family standpoint? It's of fear, uncertainty around that, like what are the implications on the for kids?
Well, like I said, thankfully kids are not being as affected. So we actually are running with a lot lower volumes than we normally do, which is amazing. So kind of one of the things, like we were talking about, like the best thing to do if your kid has a fever, cough, or symptomatic is to reach out to your pediatrician first and kind of develop a plan there. Obviously, if it's an emergency, so emergency would be difficulty breathing. You can't wake your kid up. Those are emergencies that you should call 911 or take them to the ER. But like Laura was saying, try not to bring your child to the ER just because they've been around an uncle that had COVID and now they have a fever. It's like, if they're acting normal and you have a good sense about they're eating and drinking fine, they're just having some mild symptoms, we'll bring them in, because you're just exposing yourself and other people. So the whole other issue with pediatrics is that unlike other hospitals, you can't just have the kid come in. So we are allowing one visitor per child. So God forbid you would have to come to the ER, you don't bring anybody else. You're not going to be able to bring your other kids in. And there's only going to be one visitor allowed per child.
One parent is all you're going to get.
One parent, yeah. So not one legal guardian, yeah. So a lot of this is, I feel like a lot of, like we were talking about how emergencies are still happening. So for kids, like kids are still
Breaking bones,
breaking bones, jumping off a bunk bed, like pushing their brother off the swing, and like sticking beads up their nose and coughing in their ear, swallowing quarters, all that stuff.
These are just the things that you did to your brother growing up. So this is just
So like this is just what happens with siblings. So all these things are still happening, and I will say I feel like hospitals are doing a great job, as far as I know. The one that I work at in particular is doing a great job just separating the healthy from the symptomatic. And so if you're coming and you do have symptoms, you might be waiting in the car until they're ready for you. You're not going to be sitting in the ER necessarily and spreading germs to other people that are there for something else. So all that to say, there is this great hospital in the Atlanta area called Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and they have a great COVID reference website for parents. There's a COVID hotline, so it's just staffed with nurses. So if you just want to call and run things by them, you can. There's also like a little decision tree, so you can answer some questions, and if your child has X, Y, and Z, it can kind of lead you to tell you what to do, rather than you're like, oh my gosh, my kid has fever.
Yeah.
What do I do? Like it'll kind of guide you through of what to do next. So.
Well, I'm curious personally, how are you guys maintaining buoyancy? How are you like navigating the ups and downs, as you said, changing PPE rules every other day, or like the shortages, the uncertainty? Like what's that look like for you individually? I'm just kind of curious about what have you received? What's the perspective that you've kind of like gleaned that's been most particularly impactful and helpful for you? kind of through these days and as you anticipate the days to come?
No, I had to get off of Instagram at the beginning of all of this because I was reading stories about what's going on in the ICUs in Italy and Spain, and it was tough. It was really tough. So lots of
Fasting. I mean,
lots of fresh air, and honestly, one of the greatest things that I received from other people is friends from years ago just texting me saying, "Hey, just checking on you," because I am limiting contact with other people, so it's a little isolating. But even if you, as a member of the community, know somebody who works in the healthcare, just shoot them a text and say, "Hey, I love you." And that way, if that healthcare person wants to talk about it, they can talk about it. If they don't want to talk about it, they don't have to talk about it. But just knowing that people are there and they're thinking of you makes a big difference.
that's really, really clear. Thanks. What about the rest? What about Laura? What's that looking like for you, Alex?
I very much agree. I very much agree. This is tough. It's tougher than anything we've been through in the medical community for a very long time. Just reach out through a text, through a phone call, whatever it takes. Just check on people, because the truth of the matter is we are not okay. We're not. We are going through a lot right now. We're going through a lot, in the trenches. I made a post on Facebook, it's been about 3 weeks ago, about how traumatic this has been on us. It's hard. It's very hard. It's very isolating, because the community at large does not understand the reality of what's going on. I had 3 people come into the ER today saying, "Oh, I don't care if I get it." Just very flippant. Oh, I don't care if I get it. And it's very hard as a medical professional to witness that and to see that, but to say, okay, that's okay. It's okay if you feel that way. It's okay if you feel like you don't care if you get it. But the truth of the matter is, what if you get it and you give it to your parent or you give it to your child? So this is very much a time to be actively aware of the people around you, the people that you come into contact with, because it's hard stuff. I mean, this is really hard. Never in my lifetime did I think we would be dealing with something so traumatic, really, as what we're dealing with right now. I mean, I haven't seen my kids in days. I haven't seen my mom in weeks. It's very personally traumatic for us. So just check on people. Check on people that, you're not necessarily in contact with all the time. My mom actually sent out a prayer request through her church. And I cannot tell you, you guys, just personally, I have probably received 50 plus cards in the mail, like addressed to me. "Laura, we're praying for you. We're praying for your coworkers. We are praying daily. We're on our knees praying for you. We're praying for our communities." Like, I cannot tell you what that means. Like, just that people care that we're going through this, because we as nurses, we didn't sign up for this.
Right.
This is not what we asked for. For the majority of us, we love people. We just do. That's just in our nature. We love people. We want to help people. We didn't necessarily sign up to die in the process. And that really is the reality of what's being asked of us right now. There are many nurses that are going to lawyers having their wills done up,
Wow.
because we
don't
know. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, And so it's a very sobering reality of what we're dealing with. So just reach out to the people that are around you. love them from a distance. Give those air hugs. You know, we love you. We're thinking about you. We're praying for you. And that's all it takes,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. That's really helpful. I mean, it's interesting to hear you guys talk about isolation in the midst of this hyperactivity and these long days and teaming, but just also a sense of isolation. It's really significant. I think that's, you know, one of the very purposes for why we wanted to do this call in particular was that in the spectrum of folks being affected, it can look really different for folks that don't have individual
Right.
family members, right, or coworkers, or anybody even 2, 3, 4 degrees of separation. And so I think one of the gifts you've given us this evening is to have such a clear kind of firsthand view of this is what it looks like in Jarl's life. Like, this is what it means for you to get up in the morning going like, what is it going to mean if I go in today and there's not enough people, whatever, and missing your family and trying to figure out how to keep your own family safe and healthy while at the same. So I just want to say thank you for kind of giving us both some technical pieces, a broader kind of an aerial view, and just some practical, tangible things. But one of the just what would you were so great about just, you know, prayers, those things that could be really significant. You know, the masks have been kind of the thing that's, I'll use the word, it's hot on social media. It's a stupid way of saying it, but it's like, hey, there's something we can do to help. So let's make some masks. And again, there's people that are really great at it. We have a costume designer in our church who's, you know, like kicked around coming up with ideas. So there's a lot of cool things. And for the seamstresses and all that, that's really, I'm glad to hear that those are actually, you know, invigorating and helpful, and Mickey Mouse face. And that's just awesome. Like, that's just really but I think one of the things, just it's helpful to hear what it means for us to reach out and to connect to. And so one of just the last question that might be particularly helpful for folks that are, what are some of the best and most significant things you've seen to help families who have a family member who's in an ICU, or who's, you know, like, what does that look like when it's gotten pretty severe? What does that look like for the communities to have come around those families, especially since you're having to either talk to them on Facebook, on FaceTime, or not at all? Like, what's that look like in a way that's been meaningful or helpful? What is the ways in which the faith community, just in general, the community can kind of come around those folks, whether they're directly connected to them or kind of, you know, 1 or 2 degrees of separation?
I know that with our families who have a loved one who lives with them, who's now in the ICU on life support, we ask those families not to leave their home. So as a church, if you are able to bring them Tylenol, Gatorade, anything with electrolytes, fluids, chicken soup, and just leave it at their front door for them to pick up and take inside, with Hey, thinking of you cards, that type of thing. That way they're not out in their community. Reach out to them, see if their kids want toys or something to make being at home a little less horrible, because we are very seriously asking them not to leave.
Yeah, that's very clear. Any other thoughts, Laura or Alex, on that? Just the patient, on the affected families and community, you know, because you guys, I mean, you're seeing it point blank on how it affects y'all as you see the effect. You're seeing the front effect on.
So from my perspective, I can tell you today, just even today, my son's teacher, he's in 2nd grade right now, and she's a godsend. She's absolutely been godsend, because she's allowed me to be a nurse, realizing that I cannot be there on the home front every day homeschooling him. I simply can't. I'm on the front of this. And guys, today she texted me. I was at work and she texted me and she said, "Hey, I just want you to know that I came by your house and I left you a gift on the front porch." And y'all, at work, it just melted my heart, because it was like, somebody is thinking about us, you know, and this is hard stuff. This is really, really hard stuff. We're dealing with life and death of loved ones, and it meant so much. And y'all, it was a mask. It was a mask that one of her friends had homemade for her.
Wow.
And she brought it to me, you know, saying, "Please take this. Please wear this at your hospital." And y'all, I was blown away, because she could have taken it. She could have taken it for herself and been like, "I need to protect me and my family." But no, she brought it to me, you know, just saying, I'm offering this to you to help. And it's just stuff like that just melts me, because the community has reached out so mightily in this, just trying to do what they can, in the midst of all of this.
Yeah, and Laura, I still can't even imagine, like, being away from your family. Gosh, like, and how hard it must be to be able to see them and to try to make it normal for them. Half of it's like, well, this is hard. You could be the person that says, this is really hard. Mommy can't see you, but you're like trying to make it fun for them with walkie-talkies and like trying to make it like this different season that's not scary for them. And that's amazing. Really
Thank you. Thank you. We're trying very hard to make this something that they look back on as an adventure, and not something that's traumatic in their lives,
That's really beautiful.
So, and that is the case. That's not just me. That's the majority of the medical field right now. There's actually a whole website right now on Facebook for medical workers looking for campers, trying to isolate themselves for their families. So if anybody has anything to offer out there, there's a whole Facebook page for us to isolate ourselves from our families, and we're trying to make it an adventure for our families, the kids that are affected by this, because this isn't normal. This is not normal for them.
Well, we just we're coming up on time here, and I want to honor y'all's time. But I just one person posted, just said, "These are amazing. These are women, are extremely beautiful human beings who love God, and just so grateful that you're willing to sacrifice and caring for us." And I think that's just the right sentiment. I know there can be a sense potentially of certain platitudes being said, but I just want to say, like, the the willingness and the desire for you guys. I love what you said, Laura. Like, we got into this because we love people. We don't help people. And suddenly, like, well, now it's showing up in your literally front door on your doorstep. And I just want to say, like, what a demonstration of what it means to have a whole heart and to be open to what you have to offer and can offer. Just how grateful we are, those of us who are trying to support by not being out, not getting sick, not getting other people sick. The fact that you don't have that luxury so that we can, it's just a real gift. So I just want to say, like, there are, there are heroes, they're heroes in the making, and the heroes are, I think, far more simple, just a reality of you're willing to lay down your life for other people when it comes down to it because you love them and more than yourself. And I think that's one of the really beautiful things I'm hearing and seeing. And you love your families. And so I just want to say thank you for what you've done, for your time tonight, to help us think, to help us see, for the humanness, the honesty, the humility we display. I just want to say thank you for all those who were live today watching, those who are going to be able to watch this on replay. And personally, in light of what you shared, I'd like to pray for the three of you in particular, and then maybe through you to all your coworkers. So if you don't mind, I'd love to just close with a prayer as we kind of close this time. Father, God, we want to ask for something that seems elusive and uncertain this morning. That is protection and deep care for these women, for their coworkers, for their partners, friends, for those that are going to be going to work tomorrow with them. Lord, we just want to ask, would you, by your great mercy, show your kindness? Would you give them incredible wisdom? Would you give buoyancy to their spirit? Would you refresh them with good sleep and renew their spirits to be able to step in once again, to love when it's hard to love, to answer the question once again, and to be a part of what it means to see healing take place in people's lives. So Lord, as people are being sent in to rescue, people are being sent in to care and to put themselves on line for it, Lord, we just ask that you would just supersede all the things that are coming their way. Pray for all the weights of their family, their finances, their home, things that might break in their home, all the logistics of their life. And Lord, we just pray that you would go before them. They would know that there is a God who loves them, there is a Savior who's rescued them, and that you are with them in this. And so, Lord, for us as a community, would you give us wisdom and eyes to see and open hearts. Would you broaden our sense of how we can engage, participate, love, reach out, connect in a way that's meaningful, in a way that actually serves and loves those that are paying the most price right now. And we pray that in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, Laura, Alex, Catherine, thank you so much for your time tonight. And I'm sure we're going to get questions up on the other side of this, but I look forward to having an opportunity to see you all when we're not having to see each other through the screen. Laura, I look forward to getting to meet you
Yes.
face to face,
Yes.
and give you a hug.
Thank you so much.
So anyway, really grateful for all three of you. Have a really wonderful night.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye all.
All right. Good night.